Hi, I'm Professor Stephanie, and just today we're going to talk about balance and space division. We're on Chapter 9 in your book. You're welcome to open that up and take a look at that as we walk through this. Also, if you'd like to draw these 4 rooms, whether you have graph paper or in your sketchbook, we're going to be putting furniture in these rooms in reference to balance. So you might want to take a minute and get your book and draw this and then return this back on. Thanks. Okay, these are our key words that are in that chapter for the balance and space division. The first one is implied axis. Implied axis. This definition is the center of a space. It's not shown, and yet we see it. So let's take a look at this box right here. What this is saying is that we will naturally divide this space in half. We will put what's called an implied axis in there. And this is part of when we talk about balance, we will be talking about left side, right side, and how they react with each other. So that's part of a vocabulary word that's helping us to talk about balance. Balance is positive and negative shapes distributed in the space with apparent visual weight. Okay, so the balance word's okay, but what are we talking about with visual weight? So if I take this square, and rectangle, and add another rectangle, and I'm going to make it a solid blue one, and then I take and put on the other side the same size, but I'm going to make this more dynamic. It's not a very good demonstration, but I'm going to make it more dynamic by adding pattern and color. Okay? So now, these are both the same size. This is more active, has more going on, so it visually is larger. I just took what we can call a symmetrical balance and shifted that by making this square, even though it's the same size, it has more going on in it. This we can also relate to a sofa. We put a cream-colored sofa in a room. It's going to be kind of calm and kind of fit in, right, if the room has other neutral qualities. If we take that same neutral room and put in a bright red sofa, what happens? It could be physically the same size, but what's going on? The color is just jumping out at us. And red, we know, comes toward us. So not only is it dynamic, but it's coming toward us. So its implied visual weight is different. Okay? So that's one of the things when we're doing balance. It's not just, okay, it's a 7-foot sofa, but how much size or how much impression is that giving us? Okay? So that's part of what we're going to talk about in reference to balance. All right, so the book mentions 4 different types of balance. And we are familiar with this in reference to putting our information material boards together. Remember we've seen this before when you did that when you did your career board? Okay? So another vocabulary word we're going to use is positive space and negative space. And what's our negative space in this board? The black. And the positive is what we put in there. So same with the space. We've got a floor. That's our negative. We have the sofa. There's our positive. And how we arrange that, we are thinking about the negative and the positive space. Okay? So we can apply these theories with just sort of using paper. We can apply it to boards, or we can apply it to a space. Now, what's another word that the book uses for symmetrical? Formal. And identical. Formal is what I was looking for, but I also appreciate the word identical. So it's formal. Symmetrical is formal. It's also going to be identical. So what happens is, in our space, we have to have both of these that are exactly the same size, exactly, everything about them is exact. And when we put this imaginary line in there, we have what's called a mirror image. Okay? So this becomes very typical. I love the example that's in the book. Isn't there a chest of drawers? A very formal chest of drawers. So when the cabinet maker made that, he was thinking about whatever he did on one side, he was going to do on the other side. And all that proportion, all of that is extremely symmetrical. Okay? So that's one type of balance. It's formal. It's called symmetrical. Now, what's another type of, what happens with asymmetrical? What's the word that they use there?
Informal.
Informal. Okay. Now, is asymmetrical balance still balanced?
Yes.
Yes. It's kind of tricky. And I think it's the book gives you a really good example. They have a large, if I'm remembering this correctly, they have like a large shape on one side, and then they have multiple shapes on the other, a little more random, okay? We're certainly not symmetrical, we're not approximate symmetrical, but there still is balance, okay? We'll also see this, another kind of thing we can think about is if we have a side table and we have a lamp, and then how are we going to balance that? We won't have two lamps necessarily. If we had two lamps, we could have symmetrical. Nobody wants to do that. You know what? Let's put a bowl of fruit or something, right?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Or a box. We can put a box, right? And then maybe a picture above. Okay. So we're starting to do this balance using different things and putting it together. It's still balanced, but it's not formal. Okay? And although I'm just making line drawings, when we start talking about visual weight, we'd have to look at color also. So back to our red, if this is a bright red lamp with a red shade, these can't be light and feathery, or it'll feel like it's falling over. Okay? So that's another, so as we think about balance, it's really applicable to multiple ways. All right, so there's formal balance, symmetrical, informal, asymmetrical. Now what's going on with this approximate symmetrical? Why is the approximate symmetrical important to us? If it has to be exact to be symmetrical, that's going to be pretty hard for us, right? And actually, I particularly like this author because I don't know where this came from. I'd never heard of it before, but I really like it, okay? Because it gives me the opportunity to put two things together that may be very close in shape, but that's approximate symmetrical, okay? We've got about the same size circle and about the same size square. But it's not asymmetrical. We're not like jazzed up enough. It's so close to symmetrical, but it's not symmetrical, okay? So I find that this approximate symmetry or symmetrical is very, very good for us, okay? So again, let's go back and look at this board. Could we call this approximate symmetrical? Okay, when we put that imaginary line down the middle, we don't have an exact mirror on both sides. Pretty darn close. And I think it's a little more interesting being pretty darn close than exactly the same. Okay, so that's another factor for us in reference to when we say something symmetrical, it probably is more correct to say approximate symmetry. All right? Now what happens with radial balance?
Starts from the center.
Starts from the center. So, this is my imaginary line. I just put a giant circle here. Okay. We translate this into sometimes, we could have smaller elements that are all around the center. Okay? Radial balance, approximate symmetry, asymmetrical, symmetrical. Okay? Questions? No. All right, so let's go over to something that's a little bit more in our world. And we created our floor plan of a big giant room, and we want to put furniture in this. And I want to start with symmetrical. And what I want to do is I'm going to put the design in here, and I would like you to copy it. And what I want to do is to create something that is as close to being mirrored as we can. So I'm going to create a seating group right here. Got my little sofa, and then I've got a table here with a little chair, and a table here. So if you'll take a minute out, and again, I'm hoping you've got your graph paper, just do some freehand sketching. It's okay if it's cattywampus, discombobulated. And then I'm also going to mark this as symmetrical with 2 M's. So back to this. Here's our symmetrical, right? We've got mirrors. We have both of these are exactly the same. And it's not very interesting, is it? And you would call it formal, wouldn't you? Okay? Nothing funky about this. You know, this is really, and by the way, this is very safe. When in doubt, you can always do symmetrical. Everybody will be happy. Okay? I mean, it's just a very easy, you know, it's a good kind of balance to have. Now what I want to do is I want to skip to approximate symmetrical. Okay? Let's do an approximate symmetrical. And what I want to do there, we're going to have things that are similar to that, but a little bit different. So I'm going to have my table be the same, and I'm going to have one sofa, but here I'm going to have 2 club chairs. Okay? And I'm still going to have a furniture back here, but this time I'm going to have a built-in cabinet. And then over here I'll have maybe that big bureau or something tall and the 2 chairs here. This is pretty safe, approximate. Symmetry.